Time for me to get a little drink of water. Figure this stuff is safe to drink? Huh? Actually, I don't care if it's safe or not. I drink it anyway. You know why? Because I'm an American and I expect a little cancer in my food and water. That's right. I'm a loyal American and I'm not happy unless I've let government and industry poison me a little bit every day. Let me have a few 100,000 carcinogens here. Little cancer never hurt anybody. Everybody needs a little cancer, I think. It's good for you. Keeps you on your toes. Besides, I ain't afraid of cancer. I had broccoli for lunch. Broccoli kills cancer. A lot of people don't know that. It's not out yet. It's true. You find out you got some cancer, get yourself a fucking bowl of broccoli. That'll wipe it right out in a day or two. Cauliflower, too. Cauliflower kills the really big cancers. The ones you can see through clothing from across the street. Broccoli kills the little ones. The ones that are slowly eating you away from inside. While your goddamn goofy, half-educated doctor keeps telling you, "You're doing fine, Jim." In fact, bring your doctor a bowl of broccoli. He's probably got cancer, too. Probably picked it up from you. They don't know what they're doing. It's all guesswork in a white coat. Here, let me have a few more sips of industrial waste.
Over 30 years ago, my grandmother died of chemotherapy. And it made me start thinking, and I had to write a book about natural medicine. You see, I told my grandma that I believe that nature has the answers, and that we could heal cancer in the kitchen if we really just started to pay closer attention. You see, that Hippocrates told us a long time ago that food should be our medicine, and that we should first don't hurt. Chemotherapy, poisonous synthetic chemotherapy, really does hurt. It is a poison. And disease starts in the gut, and if we want to heal, we need to start these places and recognize the power of nature, and recognize that excess of anything can be a problem. So putting this all together, I started to make a system. Started to make a system of how to deal with cancer. Now, this short little video will show you some of the different things that we work with. What not to eat, what not to think, what to do. And the first thing that you want to not eat is sugar. The refined sugars are really bad for you. You see, the cancer cell really uses that sugar, and especially the high glycemic sugar, and it feeds the cancer cell 45 times more. There's incredible amount of sugar receptors on every cancer cell. So every time you have that cancer, that sweet tooth, etc., you're feeding the cancer. And if you want to be able to starve that cancer, you have to get off of those bad sugars. Now, this other man here that we're going to be talking about, he's also found some other things that we need to do and not eat. McDonald's has even warned us not to eat their food. They've warned their own employees. You see, we have to understand what not to eat. That's much more important than what to eat. What not to eat is very, very important. And we have to take a long look at this and realize these are the things and the foods we need to avoid. Then we need to realize what we should eat. But it's most important to learn what we should not eat. We don't want to eat an old shoe, and we also don't want to eat some of that white processed sugar. Because when you get that sugar, it has that high glycemic reaction, and that is what feeds the cancer. That actually feeds the cancer. It's incredible. And if we could stop that cancer feeding, we can starve those cancer cells. Now, here is a list of high glycemic foods in the right, in the pink, that you need to avoid. There's medium foods and low glycemic foods. And if we can fill up our diet with low glycemic foods, we will have a much better chance of starving the cancer. All of this is in the books. If you can't read this from the video, all of this is in the books and you need to follow. But these are the foods that you must avoid. You can have in small amounts depending on the nature of your cancer. If you're trying to kill it, starve it, then these are the foods that you want to eat. But we need to look at all of this in an evidence-based fashion. And now we're going to be looking at some more of the evidence as our friend doctor is going to tell us more about starving cancer.
Good afternoon. There's a medical revolution happening all around us, and it's one that's going to help us conquer some of society's most dreaded conditions, including cancer. And the revolution is called angiogenesis, and it's based on the process that our bodies use to grow blood vessels. So why should we care about blood vessels? Well, the human body is literally packed with them, 60,000 miles worth in a typical adult. End to end, that would form a line that would circle the Earth twice. The smallest blood vessels are called capillaries. We've got 19 billion of them in our bodies. And these are the vessels of life. And as I'll show you, they can also be the vessels of death. Now, the remarkable thing about blood vessels is that they have this ability to adapt to whatever environment they're growing in. For example, in the liver, they form channels to detoxify the blood. In the lung, they line air sacs for gas exchange. In muscle, they corkscrew so that muscles can contract without cutting off circulation. And in nerves, they course along like power lines, keeping those nerves alive. And we get most of these blood vessels when we're actually still in the womb. And what that means is that as adults, blood vessels don't normally grow, except in a few special circumstances. In women, blood vessels grow every month to build the lining of the uterus. During pregnancy, they form the placenta, which connects mom and baby. And after injury, blood vessels actually have to grow under the scab in order to heal a wound. And this is actually what it looks like, hundreds of blood vessels all growing towards the center of the wound. So the body has the ability to regulate the amount of blood vessels that are present at any given time. And it does this through an elaborate and elegant system of checks and balances, stimulators and inhibitors of angiogenesis, such that when we need a brief burst of blood vessels, the body can do this by releasing stimulators, proteins called angiogenic factors, that act as natural fertilizer and stimulate new blood vessels to sprout. And when those excess vessels are no longer needed, the body prunes them back to baseline using naturally occurring inhibitors of angiogenesis. Now, there are other situations where we start beneath the baseline and we need to grow more blood vessels just to get back to normal levels, for example, after an injury. And the body can do that too, but only to that normal level, that set point. But what we now know is that for a number of diseases, there are defects in the system where the body can't prune back extra blood vessels or can't grow enough new ones in the right place at the right time. And in these situations, angiogenesis is out of balance. And when angiogenesis is out of balance, a myriad of diseases result. For example, insufficient angiogenesis, not enough blood vessels, leads to wounds that don't heal, heart attacks, legs without circulation, death from stroke, nerve damage. And on the other hand, excessive angiogenesis, too many blood vessels, drives disease, and we see this in cancer, blindness, arthritis, obesity, Alzheimer's disease.
Dr. Rabishi taught us the law of dualism. What creates a disease in a deficiency state can also create in an excess state. So too much or too little has to be avoided.
In total, there are more than 70 major diseases affecting more than 1 billion people worldwide that all look on the surface to be different from one another, but all actually share abnormal angiogenesis as their common denominator. And this realization is allowing us to reconceptualize the way that we actually approach these diseases by controlling angiogenesis. Now, I'm going to focus on cancer because angiogenesis is a hallmark of cancer, every type of cancer. So here we go. This is a tumor, dark, gray, ominous mass growing inside a brain. And under the microscope, you can see hundreds of these brown-staining blood vessels, capillaries, that are feeding cancer cells, bringing oxygen and nutrients. But cancers don't start out like this. And in fact, cancers don't start out with a blood supply. They start out as small, microscopic nests of cells that can only grow to 1/2 a cubic millimeter in size. That's the tip of a ballpoint pen. Then they can't get any larger because they don't have a blood supply, so they don't have enough oxygen or nutrients. And in fact, we're probably forming these microscopic cancers all the time in our body. Autopsy studies from people who died in car accidents have shown that about 40% of women between the ages of 40 and 50 actually have microscopic cancers in their breasts. About 50% of men in their 50s and 60s have microscopic prostate cancers. And virtually 100% of us, by the time we reach our 70s, will have microscopic cancers growing in our thyroid. Yet without a blood supply, most of these cancers will never become dangerous. Dr. Judah Folkman, who was my mentor and who was the pioneer of the angiogenesis field, once called this cancer without disease. So the body's ability to balance angiogenesis, when it's working properly, prevents blood vessels from feeding cancers. And this turns out to be one of our most important defense mechanisms against cancer. In fact, if you actually block angiogenesis and prevent blood vessels from ever reaching cancer cells, tumors simply can't grow up. But once angiogenesis occurs, cancers can grow exponentially. And this is actually how a cancer goes from being harmless to deadly. Cancer cells mutate, and they gain the ability to release lots of those angiogenic factors, natural fertilizer, that tip the balance in favor of blood vessels invading the cancer. And once those vessels invade the cancer, it can expand, it can invade local tissues, and the same vessels that are feeding tumors allow cancer cells to exit into the circulation as metastases. And unfortunately, this late stage of cancer is the one at which it's most likely to be diagnosed, when angiogenesis is already turned on and cancer cells are growing like wild. So, if angiogenesis is a tipping point between a harmless cancer and a harmful one, then one major part of the angiogenesis revolution is a new approach to treating cancer by cutting off the blood supply. We call this anti-angiogenic therapy, and it's completely different from chemotherapy because it selectively aims at the blood vessels that are feeding the cancers. And we can do this because tumor blood vessels are unlike normal healthy vessels we see in other places of the body. They're abnormal, they're very poorly constructed, and because of that, they're highly vulnerable to treatments that target them. And in fact, when we give cancer patients anti-angiogenic therapy, here, an experimental drug for a glioma, which is a type of a brain tumor, you can see that there are dramatic changes that occur when the tumor is being starved. Here's a woman with a breast cancer being treated with the anti-angiogenic drug called Avastin, which is FDA approved, and you can see that the halo of blood flow disappears after treatment. Now, I've just shown you two very different types of cancer that both responded to anti-angiogenic therapy. So a few years ago, I asked myself, can we take this one step further and treat other cancers, even in other species? So here is a 9-year-old boxer named Milo who had a very aggressive tumor called a malignant neurofibroma growing on his shoulder and invaded to his lungs. His veterinarian only gave him 3 months to live. So we created a cocktail of anti-angiogenic drugs that could be mixed into his dog food, as well as an anti-angiogenic cream that could be applied on the surface of the tumor. And within a few weeks of treatment, we were able to slow down that cancer's growth such that we were ultimately able to extend Milo's survival to 6 times what the veterinarian had initially predicted, all with a very good quality of life. And we've subsequently treated more than 600 dogs. We have about a 60% response rate and improved survival for these pets that were about to be euthanized. So let me show you a couple of even more interesting examples. This is a 20-year-old dolphin living in Florida, and she had these lesions in her mouth that, over the course of 3 years, developed into invasive squamous cell cancers. So we created an anti-angiogenic paste. We had it painted on top of the cancer 3 times a week, and over the course of 7 months, the cancers completely disappeared, and the biopsies came back as normal. Here's a cancer growing on the lip of a quarter horse named Guinness. It's a very, very deadly type of cancer called an angiosarcoma, had already spread to his lymph nodes. So we used the anti-angiogenic skin cream for the lip and the oral cocktail so we could treat from the inside as well as the outside. And over the course of 6 months, he experienced a complete remission. And here he is 6 years later, Guinness, with his very happy owner. Now, obviously, anti-angiogenic therapy could be used for a wide range of cancers. And in fact, the first pioneering treatments for people as well as dogs are already becoming available. There's 12 different drugs, 11 different cancer types, but the real question is, how well do these work in practice? So here is actually the patient survival data from 8 different types of cancer, and the bars represent survival time taken from the era in which there was only chemotherapy or surgery or radiation available. But starting in 2004, when anti-angiogenic therapies first became available, you can see that there has been a 70 to 100% improvement in survival for people with kidney cancer, multiple myeloma, colorectal cancer, and gastrointestinal stromal tumors. That's impressive. But for other tumors and cancer types, the improvements have only been modest. So I started asking myself, why haven't we been able to do better? And the answer to me is obvious. We're treating cancer too late in the game, when it's already established and oftentimes it's already spread or metastasized. And as a doctor, I know that once a disease progresses to an advanced stage, achieving a cure can be difficult, if not impossible. So I went back to the biology of angiogenesis and started thinking, could the answer to cancer be preventing angiogenesis? Beating cancer at its own game, so that cancers could never become dangerous. This could help healthy people, as well as people who have already beaten cancer once or twice and want to find a way to keep it from coming back. So to look for a way to prevent angiogenesis in cancer, I went back to look at cancer's causes. And what really intrigued me was when I saw that diet accounts for 30 to 35% of environmentally caused cancers. Now, the obvious thing is to think about what we could remove from our diet, what to strip out, take away. But I actually took a completely opposite approach and began asking, what could we be adding to our diet that's naturally anti-angiogenic, that could boost the body's defense system and beat back those blood vessels that are feeding cancers? In other words, can we eat to starve cancer? Well, the answer is yes, and I'm going to show you how. And our search for this has taken us to the market, the farm, and to the spice cabinet, because what we've discovered is that Mother Nature has laced a large number of foods and beverages and herbs with naturally occurring inhibitors of angiogenesis. So here's a test system we developed. At the center is a ring from which hundreds of blood vessels are growing out in a starburst fashion. And we can use this system to test dietary factors at concentrations that are attainable by eating. So let me show you what happens when we put in an extract from red grapes. The active ingredient is resveratrol. It's also found in red wine. This inhibits abnormal angiogenesis by 60%. Here's what happens when we add an extract from strawberries. It potently inhibits angiogenesis. An extract from soybeans. And here is a growing list of our anti-angiogenic foods and beverages that we're interested in studying. And for each food type, we believe that there's different potencies within different strains and varietals. And we want to measure this because, well, while you're eating a strawberry or drinking tea, why not select the one that's most potent for preventing cancer? So here are 4 different teas that we've tested. They're all common ones: Chinese jasmine, Japanese sencha, Earl Grey, and a special blend that we prepared. And you can see clearly that the teas vary in their potency from less potent to more potent. But what's very cool is when we actually combine the 2 less potent teas together, the combination, the blend, is more potent than either one alone. This means there's food synergy.
Yes, about 30 plus years ago, I discovered synergy, recognizing that 2 homeopathics, 2 foods, 2 herbs can actually potentiate each other, a process known as synergy. And sometimes they block each other, a process known as negation. And synergy is when we can combine things. And this is something very important for us to learn in nutrition.
Here's some more data from our testing. Now, in the lab, we can simulate tumor angiogenesis, represented here in a black bar. And using this system, we can test the potency of cancer drugs. So the shorter the bar, less angiogenesis, that's good. And here are some common drugs that have been associated with reducing the risk of cancer in people. statins, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and a few others, they inhibit angiogenesis too. And here are the dietary factors going head-to-head against these drugs. You can see they clearly hold their own, and in some cases they're more potent
Nature has an
than the
incredible
actual drugs.
sophistication as well. And we really need to start looking at natural foods. And how do we cure cancer in the kitchen, rather than with the synthetic drugs that cause massive side effects, damages to liver, kidney, and etc.
Soy, parsley, garlic, grapes, berries. I could go home and cook a tasty meal using these ingredients.
So I've taken the time to make some really nice recipes for you. Some basic recipes built on the idea of anti-angiogenesis to help to stop the formation of those blood vessels in feeding and giving a blood supply to the cancer. All of this you can get in my cancer course that I will be introducing a little later.
So imagine if we could create the world's first rating system in which we could score foods according to their anti-angiogenic, cancer preventative properties. And that's what we're doing right now. Now, I've shown you a bunch of lab data, and so the real question is, what is the evidence in people that eating certain foods can reduce angiogenesis in cancer? Well, the best example I know is a study of 79,000 men followed over 20 years, in which it was found that men who consumed cooked tomatoes 2 to 3 times a week had up to a 50% reduction in their risk of developing prostate cancer. Now, we know that tomatoes are a good source of lycopene, and lycopene is anti-angiogenic. But what's even more interesting from this study is that in those men who did develop prostate cancer, those who ate more servings of tomato sauce actually had fewer blood vessels feeding their cancer. So this human study is a prime example of how anti-angiogenic substances present in food and consumed in practical levels can impact on cancer. And we're now studying the role of a healthy diet with Dean Ornish at UCSF and Tufts University on the role of this healthy diet on markers of angiogenesis that we can find in the bloodstream. Now, obviously, what I've shared with you has some far-ranging implications even beyond cancer research, because if we're right, it could impact on consumer education, food services, public health, and even the insurance industry. And in fact, some insurance companies are already beginning to think along these lines. Check out this ad from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota. And for many people around the world, dietary cancer prevention may be the only practical solution, because not everybody can afford expensive end-stage cancer treatments, but everybody could benefit from a healthy diet based on local, sustainable, anti-angiogenic crops. Now, finally, I've talked to you about food, and I've talked to you about cancer, so there's just one more disease that I have to tell you about, and that's obesity. Because it turns out that adipose tissue, fat, is highly angiogenesis dependent. And like a tumor, fat grows when blood vessels grow. So the question is, can we shrink fat by cutting off its blood supply? So the top curve shows the body weight of a genetically obese mouse that eats nonstop until it turns fat like this furry tennis ball. And the bottom curve is the weight of a normal mouse. If you take the obese mouse and give it an angiogenesis inhibitor, it loses weight. Stop the treatment, gains the weight back. Restart the treatment, loses the weight again. Stop the treatment, gains the weight back. And in fact, you can cycle the weight up and down simply by inhibiting angiogenesis. So this approach that we're taking for cancer prevention may also have an application for obesity. The really, truly interesting thing about this is that we can't take these obese mice and make them lose more weight than what the normal mouse's weight is supposed to be. In other words, we can't create supermodel mice. And this speaks to the role of angiogenesis in regulating healthy set points. Albert Szent-Györgyi once said that discovery consists of seeing what everybody has seen and thinking what nobody has thought.
I had the wonderful pleasure of working with Albert Szent-Györgyi, and he won the Nobel Prize for discovering vitamin C. And he had incredible insights into the quantum energetic nature. He said that everything has a natural entity to it. And this is something that we need to pursue, and I want to thank him for the work that he did.
I hope I've convinced you that for diseases like cancer, obesity, and other conditions, that there may be a great power in attacking their common denominator, angiogenesis. And that's what I think the world needs now. Thank you.
have a few questions for you. So these drugs they're not exactly in mainstream cancer treatments right now. For anyone out here who has cancer, what would you recommend? Do you recommend pursuing these treatments now for most cancer patients?
So there are anti-angiogenic treatments that are FDA approved. And if you're a cancer patient or working with or advocating, what you should ask them, and there are many clinical trials. The Angiogenesis Foundation has followed almost 300 companies. There's about 100 more drugs that are in the pipeline. So consider the approved ones, look for clinical trials, but then between what the doctor can do for you, we need to start asking, what can we do for ourselves? And this is one of the themes that I'm talking about, is we can empower ourselves to do the things that doctors can't do for us, which is to use knowledge and take action. And if Mother Nature has given us some clues, we think that there might be a new future in the value of how we eat. And what we eat is really our chemotherapy 3 times a day.
Right. And along those lines, for people who might have risk factors for cancer, would you recommend pursuing any treatment sort of prophylactically, or simply pursuing the right diet with lots of tomato sauce?
Well, there's abundant epidemiological evidence, and I think in the information age, it doesn't take long to go to a credible source like PubMed, the National Library of Medicine, to look for epidemiological studies for cancer risk reduction based on diet and based on common medications. And that's certainly something that anybody can look into.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Wonderful presentation, and we see the foods that can produce the anti-angiogenic effects. But there's more to this in fighting cancer. There's other different spices and foods that have powerful effects other than just the anti-angiogenesis. They can work effectively on helping to reduce cancer in many other ways. Things like cumin, sage, cinnamon, ginger, rosemary, ephedra, echinacea, myrrh, safflowers, young bitter orange, sanguinaria, dandelion, elderberry, honeysuckle, salad-burret, skullcap, angelica, rhubarb, paprika, horseradish. These things have powerful effects. And let's look at the research about broccoli, our old friend, as George told us. If you can't figure that out, it's actually broccoli. Let's look at the research about it.
When I used to teach medical students at Tufts, I gave a lecture about this amazing new therapeutic called Ilacor B. I talked about all the new science, all the things it could do, excellent safety profile, and just as they were all scrambling to buy stock in the company and prescribe it to all their patients, I did the big reveal, apologizing for my dyslexia. I had gotten it backwards. All this time, I had been talking about broccoli. Sulforaphane is thought to be the active ingredient in broccoli, which may protect our brain, protect our eyesight, protect us from free radicals, induce our detoxification enzymes, help prevent cancer as well as help treat it. For example, I've talked about how sulforaphane can target breast cancer stem cells. But then I talked about how the formation of this compound is like a chemical flare reaction requiring the mixing of a precursor compound with an enzyme in broccoli, which is destroyed by cooking. This may explain why we get dramatic suppression of cancer cell growth from raw broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, but hardly anything from boiled, microwave, or steamed, except for microwave broccoli that actually retained some cancer-fighting abilities. But who wants to eat raw Brussels sprouts? I shared a strategy, though, for how to get the benefits of raw in cooked form. In raw broccoli, when the sulforaphane precursor, called glucoraphanin, mixes with the enzyme, called myrosinase, because you chopped or chewed it, given enough time, sitting in your upper stomach, for example, waiting to get digested, sulforaphane is born. Now, the precursor is resistant to heat, and so is the final product. But the enzyme is destroyed, and with no enzyme, there's no sulforaphane production. That's why I describe the hack and hold technique. Right? If you chop the broccoli, Brussels sprouts, or kale, collards, cauliflower first, and then wait 40 minutes, then you can cook them all you want. The sulforaphane is already made. The enzyme has already done its job, so you don't need it anymore. When most people make broccoli soup, for example, they're doing it Wrong. Most people cook the broccoli first, then blend it. But now we know it should be done the exact opposite way. Blend it first, wait, then cook it. What if we're using frozen broccoli, though? Here's the amount of sulforaphane found in someone's body after they eat broccoli soup made from fresh broccoli. Hits their bloodstream within minutes. Here's after frozen. Commercially produced frozen broccoli lacks the ability to form sulforaphane because vegetables are blanched, flash cooked, before they're frozen for the very purpose of deactivating enzymes. This prolongs shelf life in the frozen food section, but the enzyme is dead by the time you take it out of your freezer, so it doesn't matter how much you chop it or how long you wait, no sulforaphane has got to be made. This may be why fresh kale suppresses cancer cell growth up to 10 times more than frozen. The frozen is still packed with the precursor. Remember, that's heat-resistant. And they can make lots of sulforaphane out of the frozen broccoli by adding some exogenous enzyme, but where are you going to get some myrosinase enzyme from? Now, they bought theirs at a chemical company, but we can just walk into any grocery store. This is another cruciferous vegetable, mustard greens. All cruciferous vegetables have this enzyme. Mustard greens grow out of little mustard seeds, which you can buy ground up in the spice aisle as mustard powder. So if you sprinkled some mustard powder on your cooked frozen broccoli, would it start churning out sulforaphane? We didn't know until now. Boiling broccoli prevents the formation of any significant levels of sulforaphane due to the inactivation of the enzyme. However, addition of powdered mustard seeds to the heat-processed broccoli significantly increased the formation of sulforaphane. Here's the amount of sulforaphane in boiled broccoli. This is how much you get if you add a teaspoon of mustard powder. That's a lot, though. How about just a half teaspoon? Worked about just as well, suggesting maybe we could use even less. Domestic cooking leads to enzyme inactivation of myrosinase, and hence stops sulforaphane formation, but addition of powdered mustard seeds to cooked cabbage family vegetables provides a natural source of the enzyme, and then it's like you're practically just eating it raw. So, if you forget to chop your greens in the morning for the day, or are using frozen, just sprinkle some mustard powder on the top at the dinner table, and you're all set. Or some daikon radish, or horseradish, or wasabi, all cruciferous vegetables packed with the enzyme. Here they just used like a quarter teaspoon for 7 cups of broccoli, so just a tiny pinch can do it. Or you can add a small amount of fresh greens to your cooked greens, right? Because the fresh greens have that enzyme that can go to work on the precursor in the cooked greens. One of the first things I used to do in the morning is chop my greens for the day, and so when lunch and supper rolls around, they're good to go, as per the hack and hold strategy. But now with the mustard powder plan, I don't have to pre-chop.
But it isn't just foods. We have to look at all the different factors that cause disease. And we have to really study this so that we can work on reducing all the causes of disease, all the risk factors, to help to increase health. And this is very, very important. And I've also developed for you a very, very interesting anti-cancer syrup. Using this formula and mixing this together, it has profound effects at stopping cancer development. All the different recipes that I have in the book on how to cure cancer in the kitchen.
There are many ways to compare the healthfulness of different foods. One can compare nutrient content, for example. So if you were interested in antioxidants, you might compare vitamin C levels. If you did that for our 2 most popular fruits, apples and bananas, based on vitamin C content, bananas would appear twice as healthy, 10 milligrams in a banana compared to only 5 milligrams in an apple. But vitamin C is just one of thousands of different phytonutrients in fruits and vegetables. Turns out the vitamin C in apples accounts for less than 1% of an apple's total antioxidant activity. Here's the total antioxidant content of a red, delicious apple. Here's how much the vitamin C in the apple contributes. You can hardly even see it. Even though there's only 5 milligrams of vitamin C in a small apple, it has the antioxidant equivalent of 1,500 milligrams of vitamin C. I've reviewed before how taking that much vitamin C straight in a supplement might actually have a pro-oxidant effect and cause DNA damage. But you can get 3 times the antioxidant power eating a single apple without the adverse effects. Of course, there's more than just vitamin C in bananas, too. In fact, I was surprised to see the study out of Harvard suggesting that not only blueberries and strawberries, but bananas were significant sources of anthocyanins, the red, blue, violet phytonutrients found in berries. Maybe I underestimated bananas. They are, after all, technically berries. Still, I'm looking at these 3 fruits and I'm thinking, I see some anthocyanins here and here, but not seeing much, red, blue, or violet here. Now, wild bananas are a different story. There's anthocyanins in blue, purple, orange-red, red-purple, and pink-purple bananas, right? But none in yellow. So the Harvard researchers were challenged on it, and they said, look, we just took values from the USDA, and it turns out USDA apparently made a mistake. No anthocyanins in bananas, and despite twice the vitamin C, bananas were beat out by apples in terms of overall antioxidant power. But that's just measuring the ability of these fruits to quench an oxidation reaction in a test tube. It'd be nice to measure actual biological activity. For example, in this apple study, they also measured the ability of apple extracts from both peeled and unpeeled apples to suppress the growth of human cancer cells growing in a petri dish, compared to control. Wouldn't it be great to be able to compare that kind of superpower between different fruits? Well, now we can. Here's a graph of cancer cell proliferation versus increase in concentrations of the 11 most common fruits eaten in the United States. They decided to use human liver cancer for this study. If you drip water on these cancer cells as a control, nothing happens, right? They start out powering away at 100% growth, and they keep powering away at 100% growth. And pineapples, pears, and oranges don't do much better. Peaches start pulling away from the pack. At high peach concentrations, cancer cell proliferation drops about 10%, but bananas and grapefruits work about 4 times better, dropping cancer growth rates by about 40%. Red grapes, strawberries, and apples do even better, cutting cancer cell growth up to half at only half the dose. But these 2 fruits are the winners, causing a dramatic drop in cancer proliferation at just tiny doses: lemons and cranberries. So if you look at the effective dose required to suppress liver cancer cell proliferation, apples are more powerful than bananas, but cranberries win the day. And there was no effective dose listed for orange, pear, or pineapple, since they didn't appear to affect this cancer cell growth at all. Concern has been expressed about the fact that cow's milk contains estrogens and could stimulate the growth of hormone-sensitive tumors. Concern that the consumption of dairy products could both promote the conversion of precancerous lesions or mutated cells to invasive cancer, and enhance the progression of hormone-dependent tumors. This was initially postulated based on suggestive population scale data, like this: a 25-fold increase in prostate cancer in Japan since the war. What was happening to their diets during that period? A 5, 10, 20-fold increase in eggs, meat, and dairy consumption, whereas the rest of their diet remained pretty stable. But diet wasn't the only major change in Japanese lifestyles over the latter half-century. Similarly, even though countries with higher milk consumption tend to have more prostate cancer deaths, and countries with lower milk consumption fewer deaths, there could be hundreds of confounding variables, but it certainly does spur interest in studying the possibility. This recent study represents the other extreme, controlling for as many factors as possible by just isolating prostate cancer cells out of the body in a petri dish and dripping cow's milk on them directly. They chose organic cow's milk because they wanted to exclude the effect of added hormones and just test the effect of all the growth and sex hormones found naturally in all milk. They found that cow's milk stimulated the growth of human prostate cancer cells in each of 14 separate experiments, producing an average increase in cancer growth rate of over 30%. In contrast, almond milk suppressed the growth of these cancer cells by over 30%. But just because something happens in a petri dish or a test tube doesn't mean the same thing happens in a person. It's just suggestive evidence that can be used in a grant application or something to get money to study actual people. There's kind of two main ways that's done. Retrospective studies, looking back, where you take prostate cancer patients and figure out what they ate in the past, and prospective studies, looking forward, where you look at people's diets first and then follow them for a few years and see who gets cancer. The looking back kind are called case control studies, where they look at cases of cancer and compare their diets to controls. And the forward-looking kind are called cohort studies, because you're following a cohort of people forward. Then if you want to get fancy, you can do a so-called meta-analysis, where you combine all the best studies done to date into one and see what the balance of available evidence shows. OK, so here we go. The latest meta-analysis of all the best case control studies ever done on the matter concludes that milk consumption is a risk factor for prostate cancer. And the latest meta-analysis of all the best cohort studies ever done also concludes that milk consumption is a risk factor for prostate cancer. An even newer study suggests that milk intake during adolescence may be particularly risky in terms of potentially setting one up for cancer later in life. Despite hormone-related cancers being among our top killers, as pointed out in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute, we simply do not know which hormones and how much are in the food we ingest. More effort has been directed at the investigation of illicit use of designer steroids by Olympians and ball players than to the investigation of the effect of dietary hormones on cancer and other diseases that affect millions. A proposal is therefore made to monitor levels of steroid and other hormones and growth factors in all dairy and meat-containing foods, though to date this has not been done.
So now we can see that there's an awful lot of research about these different foods and being able to stop cancer. Profound research showing that the foods can be sometimes even more powerful than chemotherapy. Very, very interesting. And as you start to use these recipes, you will find out that they really can work for you. And still try to work with your doctor. Try to find a friendly doctor who will work with you, a doctor who respects nature, who understands that if it doesn't work, we can always go back to those synthetic drugs. But let's try to use nature as much as possible before we give anything else a chance.
Sweet potatoes can be considered a superfood, one of the healthiest vegetables on the planet, and one day perhaps even off the planet, as NASA has chosen it for space missions. One of the healthiest and cheapest. The study aimed to identify which vegetables provided the most nutrients per dollar. If you look at a graph of affordability versus nutrition, you can see that the healthiest foods, like dark green leafy vegetables, may also be among the cheapest, and the highest nutrient-rich food scores per dollar were obtained for sweet potatoes. They're not just packed with nutrition, but may have special cancer-fighting properties. In 1931, a unique protein was discovered in sweet potatoes, later renamed. 80% of the protein in sweet potatoes is a type of protease inhibitor with potential anti-cancer effects. It was originally tested against leukemia cells and appears to suppress the growth of leukemia cells in a petri dish, but how would a sweet potato protein ever get into our bloodstream? As soon as most proteins hit our stomach, they start getting digested. So they tried sweet potato protein against tongue cancer. Sweet potato constituents certainly come in contact with our mouth. Tongue cancer is often treated with chemo. However, most of the chemo drugs for tongue cancer have great aversive side effects, so it is indispensable for us to find other therapeutic strategies. Sweet potato protein rapidly diminished viability of the cancer within a matter of days, leading them to propose that sweet potato may be useful for human tongue cancer, but presumably not much else. Remarkably, though, this class of proteins doesn't just survive digestion, but may be absorbed into the bloodstream intact, in at least 2 of the 9 women with advanced cervical cancer they tried giving it to. So, most recently, it was tried on colorectal cancer cells, one of our most common and deadly cancers. Normally, we just surgically remove the colon, but that only works in the early stages, since there are often micrometastases outside the colon that can subsequently lead to cancer recurrence and death. And so we've started searching for anti-metastatic agents. And not only does sweet potato protein slow down the growth of colon cancer cells, but decreases cancer cell migration and invasion. Though sweet potato consumption has been associated with lower gallbladder cancer rates, it's never been directly put to the test. But what's the downside?
The most important foods to reduce your risk.
We control our destiny.
Next.
I always say food is medicine, and what you put on your plate can have a huge impact when it comes to fighting breast cancer. So today, I'm going to show you 3 food groups that are critical to keeping your breasts healthy. Here with me is registered dietitian and nutritional consultant to the American Cancer Society, Rachel Bellow. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi.
All right, so we're going to present a couple of these. The first and most important group to fight breast cancer are the sulforaphane-rich foods. I'm talking about cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, arugula, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and many, many more. They contain a chemical called sulforaphane. So, Rachel, how can these help?
Well, cruciferous vegetables that are rich in sulforaphane are considered top of the line when it comes to cancer-fighting properties. They have compounds in them that really protect our cells from damage.
So I got a couple that I love a lot, but I want to know which are your favorites.
My ultimate favorite is broccoli sprouts. Just a little bit.
Broccoli sprouts?
Broccoli sprouts.
Not Brussels sprouts?
Nope. It's 3 to 4 day old broccoli, very immature, and just a handful, a small little bit, just like this, has as much sulforaphane as a pound of mature broccoli.
Huh. But tell you what, if you don't like it, you're not going to eat it. Is that right? I thought so.
Exactly.
So what I'm going to do is get a couple of you to taste this. So who wants to go first? Come on over here. Let's go here. Grab it. Come on, don't be bashful here, everybody. Let's go on up there. Come on now. Let's have some tasters. And then let me see some smiling faces. Here you go. Do it. What do you... Oh.
Not bad at all.
Good, good.
Be honest now.
I don't know.
Oh, you haven't tasted it yet. Get that stuff in there. That stuff prevents cancer. Hurry up.
It's good.
Reasonable?
It's good.
About final say.
Delicious. I love it.
Perfect. All right, I got 4 more here. Pass those up there. There you go. We got more, don't worry. We got more coming. The next group that you need to fight off breast cancer are the folate-rich foods. Let's walk over here. Now, Rachel, though these are there's a wide variety of folate-rich foods. We talk about them all the time. I talk about the eggs, the spinaches, the asparaguses, oranges. Right, just to name a few. So, what I love about the folate a lot is it actually helps prevent some of the damage of your DNA. That blueprint,
yes,
that when you get typographical errors in it, it causes big problems. Like that animation I showed of breast cancer cells. Listen, everybody here, especially women, in your lifetime will probably have breast cancer cells in there. So what we're trying to do now is to make sure that you have as few as possible and that your immune system is strong enough, as I showed, to catch up to it and take it away. So, as a dietitian expert, teach me about folate from your perspective. Why is this so important for breast cancer?
It protects our cells, as you mentioned, and it's found in so many foods. But recently, there was a study that showed that women with high levels of folic acid had a 44% reduction risk of getting breast cancer. That's amazing.
Yeah. You said 40% earlier overall.
Correct.
And this is now 44% in addition.
44% in addition.
All right, so which is your favorite? You mentioned
I love green sprouted lentils in particular.
Sprouted lentils? Sprouted.
They've been germinated, opened up a little bit, and then dried. And another great thing is that it's fast food at its best. It takes 5 minutes to cook it. It's super inexpensive, about 55 cents per serving. So there's really no excuse.
You buy it in the store like this? Or you have to take lentils and sprout them?
No, you could, but who has time for that? We're talking fast food. So you just go to the health food store and pick up a bag, or at a farmer's market. And it's great. 5 minutes. You've got a ton of folic acid and fiber, and it's just amazing. And there is one big bonus that my patients always report back, is that it's very easy to digest.
You don't get the gas.
You don't get as much gas, not nearly as much gas.
If I ate these now, we'd have gas by the end of the segment. All right, now I promise you guys these. I'm going to taste one of these also. I've not tasted these before. I'm saving one for myself. So go ahead. Let's see how you guys will do over these things. Now, do any of you have gas problems? Go on. Here you go. Here, pass that around up there. All right. All right, let's see what you're going to do. What do you guys think? Thoughts?
That's very good.
Very good. Is that your daughter?
Yes.
Yes. You happy with it?
I like it. It'd be good on a salad.
Good on a salad. Any thoughts? Very good. No, any belly cramping yet? No. I like these a lot, Rachel. I think they taste really good.
Those are great. And you know what is also great is adding, while it's still hot, if you can add a little bit of tomatoes, you're going to get a super great shot of lycopene, which also is cancer preventative.
You know, she didn't share it with us before, guys. I would have added the tomatoes there. All right. The last group of breast cancer fighting foods are the fiber-rich foods. These include whole grains like fruits. Pears and berries are pretty rich in them. So why do we need fiber more than normal? Fiber is the ultimate breast cancer prevention tool that we have as far as food. I think it's one of the best. It acts as your, it's your daily dose of protection. So Rachel knows that I love oatmeal. Yes. And so she has a way of boosting the fiber in my oatmeal that may have an incremental benefit for breast cancer. Absolutely. We're going to give it 5 more. Okay. So basically what we have here is what I call the Healthy Breast Mix. Oh, I like that. All in one packaged. Here you go. There we go. Make it for us. All right. So what you're going to do is you're going to take some Ceylon cinnamon. You're going to put it in there. Some granulated orange peel. It's good, right? Yeah, it's good. The key thing I like to recommend is that it be organic because the peel tends to be pesticide heavy. Okay. And it's just a little bit more expensive. And these are white chia seeds. And chia seeds are packed with antioxidants, boatloads of fiber, and omega-3s. Right. So it's my ultimate favorite there. No, I'm a big fan of chia. So you put that all together, you put it on top of the oatmeal. Then you're going to sprinkle it on your oatmeal, and you've really raised the bar on your oatmeal. You went from 4 to 9 grams of fiber, plus all the other benefits. Should I share these with you guys? I thought so. I'm going to come over here this way. Let me see these guys. All right. And how much, by the way, do you need a day in order to prevent a problem? A tablespoon of this will add 5 grams. Ultimately, for a day, you want 30 to 35 grams of fiber. All right. That's a lot of fiber, guys. Let's see how you do here. There we go. All right. Let's find out. All right. Now pass it up. Here. Pass it around up there. There we are. Okay. Let's hear some voting here. It's good. Good? Just good? Average? I like it. Would you have it at home?
Yes, I would. It's very good. Very good.
Everybody, reasonable? You can check out the recipes for these cancer-fighting foods at DrOz.com. Rachel, thank you very much.
Ideally, if you have cancer, you really want to, first thing as far as dietary, you want to cut out the sugars in your diet. These sugars start to feed the cancer cells. Cancer cells have many more sugar receptors, and also when you start activating the pancreas to produce more insulin growth factors, these make things grow when we add in more sugar, so we don't want extra growth during times of cancer, so we try to go very low glycemic. If people can start incorporating sprouts because they're very high in nutrition and enzyme activity, and also juicing, the juicing of vegetable juices, but we call them green drinks, which are made of celery, cucumber, sunflower, and pea sprouts. They're complete proteins, very high in nutrients, chlorophyll, and phytonutrients. And the phytonutrients are some of the true healers of disease and disorder. And the phytonutrients, if you look at some of the studies done by Johns Hopkins University, they studied the broccoli sprouts. And what they found was the anti-cancer properties in broccoli sprouts were so powerful, they actually patented broccoli sprouts for a short period of time until an ethical judge threw it out of court saying you can't patent nature. But beyond that, also juicing of the wheatgrass is highly beneficial for the chlorophyll, the phytonutrients, and other nutrients as well. Pure water is going to be a very good thing. And at the most economical, distillation. There's more expensive filters beyond that, but that's one that you can use also. Aerobic exercise is if one's able to help get more oxygen into the system.
Oxygen is also very, very important to help in treating cancer, among many, many other things. And we have the oxygen donor, the methyl donor, which helps to produce oxygen It's B15, as the Russians called it, a liquid oxygen. It very, very dramatically helps. You'll see research on this and many other things in the International Journal of the Medical Science of Homeopathy, Naturopathy, and you'll see the different research that we did on cancer in Kiev. Natural chemotherapy. You can see all of these different things that have been produced and all the different research that you can learn more and more about. And we've seen that there has been research that tells us that chemotherapy might not be as successful as doctors like to think of it. Now, when we get to chemotherapy, there is a natural type of chemotherapy. As we've discussed many, many times, that chemotherapy was actually discovered by farmers. And here's some of the natural chemotherapy compounds. These produce a type of poison that is poison to you, to the body, but it's extremely poisonous to the cancer cells. These compounds can be used very, very carefully. They can be used very, very carefully, but they are poisonous. You can make ice cream with them, you can make other different things, but overdosing them can be a problem. Before you're using those chemotherapy problems, you should be looking into the book and learning an awful lot more and taking our course on cancer, because we have now a full course on cancer that will help you to understand what to do and how to fully treat cancer patients, how to help them in every different way. And inside there we have all the different research that we've done from the quantum level, and how, as we're looking at now, we're looking at different cells that are being, cancer cells that are being destroyed at the same time that there is a stimulation from the schio, from the eductor, that this electrical information helps to stimulate the body to destroy the different factors of cancer. When the body electric kicks in with the schio and eductor, why should we be surprised when the cancer goes away? The doctors call it spontaneous remission. It's not spontaneous. It's actually an electrical medicine. Because this is what we found. It might seem like magic, but actually there is a body electric, and it can be stimulated to do these things. And if we get the right types of foods and vegetables, and we learn what not to eat, learn what not to do, then learn what's good, and then use the machine, yes, we can dramatically really help you. We can help you to deal with these cancers. And if everything else fails, you can go back to the doctor. But we've conquered these things and put these things into different books. I've done work with Dr. Chelier. I've done work with many other famous doctors to help put this together for you. And we can see that stress really is involved, and it is one of the major causes of cancer and all disease. And if we could stimulate the immune system properly by using the different videos and books and getting trained, and then dealing with the causes of disease, we can help to really stimulate and recognize, physician, heal thyself, and cancer can be cured in the kitchen.